We're telling you the entire history of cats. Yes, all of them. From their humble beginnings as civet-like carnivores to the great variety of species of today, it has been a long and windy road. But for millions of years, cats have slowly turned into almost perfect killing machines. So why are there so many cat species? And what happened to the saber-tooth, the American lion, and all the other amazing species that disappeared? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animalogic. Today, we're talking about all the cats that we know of that have ever lived. It's an incomplete picture because many species lived in places like rainforests, which made it very difficult for their bones to fossilize. But we're going to tell you about everything that we know about the species in the fossil record, and also how they went from looking like stretched civets to the beautiful, majestic creatures that we know and love today. No love lost for civets, by the way. Our story begins in Europe, around 30 million years ago. The continent was warmer than it is today, and was covered in forests. They weren't quite tropical jungles, but more like the humid forests of Appalachia. In the branches of these trees lived Proailurus, the oldest cat we know of. This was the Proailurus, aka the dawn cat. They were the size of a Maine Coon cat, but were shaped like a civet. They lived part of their lives in trees, but could possibly also hunt on the ground. Proailurus was an ambush predator, and likely ate small rodents and rabbits. So some of the key features of cats were already there. Their teeth are what set them apart from their non-cat ancestors, who had a more generalized diet and whose molars were for chewing plants. Proailurus was already going into hypercarnivory. They could only eat meat, which is still how cats are today. But they weren't alone for long. Other cat species started to show up around 20 million years ago. In Africa, Catophelus, Namophelus, and Diamantophelus lived in the woodlands of the southern part of the continent. They still had the longer snout of the cat ancestors. In Europe, Stereophelus was starting to show the modern shape of the cat, with a shorter body than Proailurus. Fossils found in Europe show a cat that was becoming more compact, agile, and built for stalking. It had short forelimbs and long hind limbs, which suggest it was good at climbing and probably preferred the forest, such as the Miocene woodlands of Madrid. We know very little about these cats because there's only a handful of fossils. But what we do know is that they would give rise to the last common ancestor of all modern cats and saber cats. This was the Pseudaelurus. It appeared around 20 million years ago and crossed the Bering Strait into North America about 1 million years later. This was the first cat that you could look at and immediately recognize as a feline. Unlike Proailurus's civet-like gait, it walked on its toes like modern cats. Their snout was shorter, their canines got bigger, and their molars got even smaller. From this point on, cats wouldn't do any food grinding. Their teeth would specialize to slice flesh. Cats were also getting pretty big. As Pseudaelurus spread throughout the habitats of the Northern Hemisphere, different species showed up. And some of them were as big as cougars. Oh my God, there's a cougar! These were no longer small game hunters. During their era, the world was cooling and grasslands were spreading. Mammals evolved quickly to the savanna lifestyle by getting larger and faster. Without the cover of the forest, they were always exposed to predators, so they had to be quick or be dead. Early horses, deer, and camelids grazed in these new environments, and the Pseudaelurus was one of their predators. Like a puma hunting a vicuna, they would stalk their prey, then have an explosive burst of acceleration, and then would grapple their prey and bring it down. As these cats spread all over Eurasia and North America, they filled new niches, and new species appeared. This message is sponsored by Raycon. With Mother's Day coming up, we're all thinking of a present that makes our moms' lives better. And in my case, I'm going with Raycon's Essential Open Earbuds, which I use and love. Here at Animalogic, we sometimes get the chance to travel and see some incredible places. But when you're in an unfamiliar place, it's as important to be aware of your surroundings as it is to keep listening to your favorite music. Whether you're paying attention to bird songs or listening to announcements when you're commuting, or simply just being aware of people around you, the earbuds give you great sound quality while still letting you hear the sounds around you. They're super light and lock into place, so they're secure when you're doing physical activities like hiking or going to the gym. And you don't have to worry about them running out of battery charge because it lasts up to 36 hours. I use my Raycons every day when I'm in nature, and I'm pretty sure my mom will enjoy them when she's gardening or going on her walks. They cost about half the price of similar earbuds of the same quality by other brands. But if you go to buyraycon.com/animalogicopen, you'll get an extra 15% off. So buy your loved ones a present they'll love, or get a pair for yourself. Thank you, Raycon, for sponsoring this episode. Now, back to the entire history of cats. 17 million years ago, North American Pseudaelurus gave way to Proailurus. They were also cougar-like cats and were the first cat genus to be native to North America. They were the size of leopards. At this time, North America was warmer, greener, and filled with forests, open woodlands, and rivers. In these environments, Proailurus were stealthy ambush predators of birds, early deer, and other ungulates. The Miocene had been warm and heavily forested, but the climate was cooling. Forests were breaking up and grasslands were taking over. The big winners from this change were hoofed grazing animals, whose diversity exploded during this period. Many of them grew larger. They formed herds in open terrain. And none of these megafauna seemed particularly interested in looking normal. Check out the Calicotheres, the 8-foot-tall herbivores described as a blend between a horse, a gorilla, and a sloth. It was a strange time to be a plant. Animals in colder climates often become larger. Larger bodies are usually better at retaining heat, storing fat, and traveling long distances. This is known as Bergmann's rule. These hefty meals and open landscapes meant predators had to adapt. As prey got larger, it got harder to wrestle it down like Pseudaelurus used to. Some of these cats became so specialized at hunting these large prey that they transformed their heads into daggers and became pro bullfighters. These were the saber-tooth cats. Instead of refining the short-muzzled, suffocating bite we see in modern lions and pumas, saber-tooth kitties lengthened their upper canines to stab their prey in the throat. One of the oldest known species was Myomachirotis pseudaeluroides. As the name suggests, it still looked pretty similar to a Pseudaelurus, but the teeth were getting the iconic sabers. It represents an early step in saber-tooth evolution, when ordinary cat-like predators were starting to experiment with longer, blade-like canines. They look like cat Draculas, but the new adaptation was a huge hit. These kitties definitely match the freak of their megafauna prey. But before we get carried away, I shall pause and acknowledge that saber-tooth is a word that gets thrown around a lot. And to be fair, saber cats weren't even the first ones to try this overachieving canine shtick. Before the so-called true felid saber-tooths, there were nimravids, which were distant, cat-like carnivores with their own saber teeth. They looked similar, but they weren't true cats. If you zoom out even further, the first animals to ever evolve saber teeth weren't mammals at all. Around 260 million years ago, long before the dinosaurs, Permian synapsids called Gorgonopsians had their own blade-like canines. This was just a classic case of convergent evolution. Nature just keeps on reinventing the blade. And it works, until it doesn't. But more on that later. But back to our actual saber-tooth cats, whose teeth were only a part of their perfectly menacing design. Sorry, can't help myself. Saber cats were a whole anatomical package. A skull built for an extreme gape, enlarged neck muscles, and massive forelimbs for grappling. Their iconic move was to surprise and overpower their prey and then kill it with their sabers. They were basically the living versions of your favorite slasher film villains. Now, despite this charming description and the reputation, saber cats were not actual bone crushers. They were soft tissue specialists, built for precision, like brain surgeons. It's kind of like why you wouldn't use a chef's knife on bones. Another early saber cat was Paramachairotis. Compared to Myomachairotis, these were larger and slightly more specialized saber-tooths, and had longer, blade-like teeth and could open their mouth even wider. All of that combined to make them better at hunting prey like Hipparion, early horses that could be up to 300 kilograms, or 600 pounds. These cats only weighed about half of that, but thumb-sized daggers were big enough to take the horsies down. Surprisingly, their teeth were actually quite fragile. They were strong from the downward strike kind of way, but were pretty vulnerable from lateral stress. That meant that they had to control their prey first, or risk snapping a tooth. And here's another surprising fact. Despite their enormous fangs, saber-toothed cats actually had a weaker bite than modern lions. And it makes sense. It takes a lot less force to stab a lime with a knife than to squeeze it dry with your bare hands. Now, imagine the lime is a deer's throat. In Pokemon terms, the next evolution of the saber-tooth appeared in Africa and Eurasia roughly 12 million years ago. This was Machairotis, the first truly gigantic saber-tooths. Paramachairotis was about the size of a leopard. No slouch by any means, but Machairotis was bigger than a lion. Its teeth were serrated and about the size of a chef's knife. For a while, Machairotis was the king of cats, and few animals dared to challenge it. Besides possibly bear dogs, but those are a subject for another episode. Meanwhile, in the plains of North America, the Nimravides species hunted camels and three-toed horses. See, I wasn't joking when I said Miocene herbivores were funky looking. They look like 5th-generation Pokemon when the designers were starting to run out of ideas. Nimravides was interesting because although its head was obviously that of a saber-toothed cat, the rest of its body resembled more of a generalist cat. Later saber-tooths, like Megantherion, Homotherium, and finally Smilodon, would transition from hind-leg-powered cats to front-leg-powered beasts. Their teeth were precision instruments, but they still needed to jump onto prey and hold on for dear life until they delivered the coup de grace. In some ways, their bodies were slightly more bear-like, with large and thick front limbs. This was a strategy that worked for millions of years, until the large prey they used their forearms to hold on to was killed by climate change and hairless primates. If you've ever wondered if saber-toothed cats could survive today, the answer is mostly no. But Nimravides would have been one of the most likely candidates to thrive today. By the mid-Miocene, saber-toothed cats expanded widely into a huge range of ecosystems. Gone were the days where they were exclusive savanna giant killers. By this point, not even open forests were safe for large ungulates. Of course, hunting in the forest required different adaptations than grassland stalking, so two distinct branches appeared, the dirk-tooths and the scimitar-tooths. I know, it's a lot of knives to memorize, but it'll all make sense once you see how they use them. In the savannas, where chasing prey is a necessity and being fast is non-negotiable, saber-tooths with serrated teeth ruled. These were the scimitar-tooths. Stabbing at high speeds was dangerous and imprecise, so their teeth became steak knives to slash through flesh. Our old friend Nimravides was an earlier version of this, but Amphimachyrodus was a leap forwards on scimitar-tooth technology. At this point, if you stood in the middle of the savannah, you might have seen an Amphimachyrodus easily take down an upright ape. And across the world, in geographically isolated areas, new saber-tooths were eating all sorts of new prey. That's because isolation breeds new species. When oceans fall back, cats walk where water once stood. Water returns. Speciation. I made that fang coup just for you. You're welcome. The other main branch belonged to the dirk-toothed cats. These cats took the bare body shape to the next level, as they specialized in ambushing prey in more closed environments, like open woodlands. They couldn't sprint as fast as the scimitar-toothed cats, but they were absolutely swole and could pin down prey before delivering bites with their shank-like teeth. Dirks are stabbing daggers, so it makes sense. You can think of these cats as stabbers and scimitar-toothed cats as slashers. If the scientists who named these cats weren't such nerds, they would have called them shank-tooth and machete-tooth. But that's an argument we can no longer win. Promeganterion was the main dirk tooth during this period, but it was still an early stage of the dirk tooth evolution. At the same time, in Eurasia, saber cats with smaller teeth that didn't fit in with the dirk tooths or scimitar tooths appeared. In Eurasia, Yoshi and Adelphi-lurus lived a more generalist lifestyle. Not much is known about them, and some researchers don't even consider them saber-tooths. But hey, we promised we'd mention all these species. All we really know about them is that for saber-toothed cats, their teeth were kind of small, but they did thrive for several million years. Around 8 million years ago, a new kind of cat split off from the non-saber-toothed cat lineage. This was Panthera, the lineage that would eventually lead to lions, jaguars, tigers, and leopards. We know this split happened around 8 million years ago thanks to DNA analysis, but the oldest fossil we have is Panthera blythei from the Himalayas, which lived about 6 million years ago. This cat already had most of the features that all big cats still have today. Around the same time, the small cat lineage appeared. These tiny hunters specialized in rodents, birds, and other small animals. They also evolved the ability to make their hyoid vibrate. This was the first time that you could officially make a kitty purr. Not all small cats are small. The cougar is technically part of this branch of the cat family. They actually have their own branch within the small cat branch, along with the improperly named jaguarundi and the fastest cat on Earth, the cheetah. But we have a special guest who loves these cats and is here to tell us all about them. Ladies and gentlemen, Lindsay Nikole.
We don't have fossils of the ancestral species of this lineage, but we know it was a medium-sized cougar-like cat. From that one ancestor, pumas went thick, bulky, built for power. Jaguarundis went freak mode. And a third cat went more towards speed. Yeah, the cheetah. Everything about them is built for speed. Long limbs, a lightweight frame, a spine so flexible it acts like a coiled spring, and massive nasal passages to flood its lungs with oxygen. Semi-retractable claws to grip, a rudder-like tail to maneuver and turn. Every single adaptation points to the same goal, catching the fastest prey on Earth. The earliest member of the group, Acinonyx aicha, showed up in Africa and Eurasia looking like something halfway between a cougar and a cheetah, still figuring out the whole thing. But it wasn't long before the giant cheetah appeared, and this creature meant business. Twice the size of any cheetah alive today. It was taking down horses, young bison, and large deer. A sprinter built like a tank. Over time, though, competition with other big cats forced the lineage to specialize. Acinonyx pleistocynicus and Acinonyx intermedius gradually got smaller, squeezed into the fast prey niche, because it turns out moving a massive body at those speeds is just brutally expensive energy-wise. By around 2 million years ago, the modern cheetah had emerged and spread across the grasslands of Africa and Asia. Weirdly, on the other side of the world, A separate group had split off from cougars and was independently evolving the exact same solution. The North American cheetahs, genus Miracinonyx, were doing their own thing, and their likely prey was the pronghorn. That relationship gave North America some of the fastest predator-prey chases the continent has ever seen, that we know of, hitting speeds up to 100 kilometers per hour, or about 60 miles per hour. The first humans to arrive in North America ran into these cheetahs constantly, competing for the same kills, chasing them off their hunts. But eventually the Ice Age ended, the glaciers pulled back, and the grasslands the cheetahs depended on started shrinking. The last American cheetah made its final hunt somewhere on the Great Plains around 12,000 years ago. Today there's only one species left, Acinonyx jubatus, holding on across Africa and in a small, critically endangered population in Iran. They and their prey, gazelles and impalas, are a living snapshot of one of evolution's most intense arms races. And we should do everything we can to make sure they have a better outcome than their American cousins. Thanks for having me. Back to you.
Lindsay wrote a whole book about the history of life on Earth, but we'll let her tell you about it.
It's called Epic Earth. It tells the story of how life evolved over billions of years. I wanted to show you what the inside looks like because the illustrations are sick. These, then boom. Table of contents, boom. Sick, boom. Check it out, boom, boom. Tons of cool illustrations to go along with all the ways life evolved. We've got specific species, strange specimens, etc. Book to go about how life evolved over billions of years. Check out my book. I'm very proud of it, and it's out now. That's it. Thanks.
You can get it by clicking on the link in the description. Thanks, Lindsay. The other two species in this lineage could hardly be more different. The puma is a large hunter that can even take down llamas. They're kind of an ersatz big cat, but unlike lions and tigers, they can't roar. But unlike many small cats, they also can't purr. So what fearsome noise do they make? They meow. They're incredibly adaptable and live in diverse habitats from Alaska to Patagonia. The jaguarundi is a long and slender cat that hunts in dense vegetation and is very active during the day. It's kind of a throwback to early cats. You could call them neoclassical cats, as they might be the closest living analog to Proailurus, or a tiny version of the Pseudaelurus. Back to the saber-tooth cats. One of the greatest scimitar-tooth genera appeared around 4 million years ago. Its name was Homotherium. Some scientists describe them as a dog-like cat, which is probably pretty offensive to these cats. They had long legs and a leaner-built frame compared to the stockier saber-tooths we often think of. This suggests they were probably better suited to covering distance in open terrain. Some researchers have suggested that they hunted in packs. They spread widely across Eurasia, Africa, and North America and survived until about 12,000 years ago, which means that humans lived in their lands and died in their jaws. We all likely have a great-great-great-great-grandpa who died by the blade of a scimitar-toothed cat. By the Pliocene, saber-tooths weren't just widespread, they were specialized. Dinofelis, a saber cat that didn't fit in with the dirks or the scimitars, roamed Africa, Eurasia, and North America. Like Homotherium, some fossil sites suggest that Dinofelis might have hunted early hominins. Some hominin skulls show puncture marks where spacing matches dino canines. Yep, these guys could turn your head into a bowling ball. Around this time as well, the small cats were radiating. And we don't just mean that they looked gorgeous, because they did, but also that the new branches were splitting off this family tree and creating loads of new species. Many of them are still alive today, but we'll talk about them in depth a little later. The saber-toothed cat reached its platonic ideal around 2 million years ago. Its name alone could turn the smiles of our ancestors upside down. Its name was Smilodon. If you grew up watching Ice Age, this is Diego. He's my little Smilodon. There were 3 species. One, Smilodon fatalis, which literally means deadly knife tooth. The others were the Smilodon populator, or knife tooth the destroyer, and Smilodon gracilis, or the slender knife tooth. Real Diego was roughly lion-sized and bear-shaped. They were so weird that some paleontologists have misidentified their fossils as belonging to bears and hyenas. They had a bobtail that indicated it didn't chase like a lion, but rather ambushed its weird-looking prey. Sorry I keep roasting them, but come on, just look at this guy. Here's the rundown. Forelimbs like a heavyweight grappler, massive chest, stout back legs, and neck muscles much bigger than a modern cat's. Their thumbs sported grappling hooks, and their canines reached nearly 30 centimeters. That's longer than an average human foot. Imagine 2 of your feet growing from your gums. Ew. Smilodon populator had the longest fangs of any saber-tooth ever. Imagine encountering that as a human trying to make it in the open pampas of Ice Age South America. And here's another surprise. Those iconic fangs were likely covered by fleshy lips when their mouth was closed. So it probably didn't walk around permanently mid-snarl. There's something cool about having the longest blades ever and keeping them tucked away like you've got nothing to prove. Saber-tooth kittens were born with small milk canines. Their famous blades took years to fully erupt. For a while, they had unique double fangs, baby teeth that sat beside developing, fragile adult sabers. I can't decide if I would have been more or less cool in my awkward teenage years if I had double fangs. In adulthood, they could open their mouths an amazing 120 degrees. For reference, a lion can only open their mouths at about 65 degrees. Hey, listen, I'm not saying that's not impressive. Pretty amazing. I ain't lying. Get it? At the La Brea tar pits in California, paleontologists have dug up thousands of Smilodon fossils. Many show healed, broken bones that would likely have been fatal for a solitary predator. Yet they healed, which suggests possible cooperative behavior, maybe social groups. La Brea tar pits tells a brutal story. Struggling megafauna trapped in asphalt drew in predators again and again, who then became trapped themselves. A prehistoric domino effect. Smilodon is one of the most common large carnivores found there. The golden age of saber-tooths and big cats started around 1 million years ago. In North America, Smilodon fatalis was the apex predator of the forest. In the prairies, the American lion, one of the largest lions ever, preyed on bison. And in some southern forests, the American jaguar pounced on its prey with incredible strength. In South America, Smilodon populator, possibly the largest saber-tooth ever, stalked the woodlands, and Homotherium cerums, a massive scimitar tooth, thrived patrolling the plains. In the south, humongous Patagonian panthers, another jaguar species, were well adapted to the rocky terrain of the southern Andes. Their prey included giants like the ground sloths. In Eurasia, the incorrectly named cave lion was one of the apex predators of mammoth steppes and made their living hunting reindeer and other large ungulates. In the forests, the European jaguar made a killing under the evergreen trees of the continent. And in between, in rocky crops or forest edges, the European leopard hunted with its iconic climbing and dive-bombing ability. This terrifyingly awesome age of big cats came to an abrupt end because the world changed again. The ecosystems that helped them thrive were disappearing, and competition with the greatest predator was not survivable. Saber-tooths had survived climate swings before. They had crossed continents, adapted to new prey, outlasted competitors. But around 12,000 years ago, change accelerated. Subtle shifts in Earth's orbit increased northern sunlight, pushing the planet out of its last ice age. Glaciers retreated rapidly, and vegetation patterns shifted. Humans spread widely and were very effective hunters. Yes, the same humans like you and me who survive on delivery and YouTube videos. Large megafauna like mammoths and giant ground sloths declined quickly. Saber-tooths were specialists. Their anatomy was tuned for large-bodied prey. When that prey vanished, the blade didn't have much left to cut. And they weren't alone. The European cave lion, the American lion, the American cheetah, not true cheetahs, but fast-running relatives, they all disappeared. That's part of why the pronghorn is still absurdly fast today. It evolved to outrun a predator that no longer exists, like they're still running from evolutionary ghosts. But saber-toothed cats have no real descendants or relatives surviving today. This is a phenomenon known as macroevolution ratchet. Lineages tend to push towards increasing specialization, which has advantages in stable environments, but become a liability when ecosystems shift rapidly. We're not saying that they failed because their teeth were flawed. They were around for 20 million years. That's 10 times longer than the genus Homo has existed. And with that, one of the most iconic predator designs in mammalian history vanished. For the first time in millions and millions of years, no saber-toothed cat roamed the earth. The closest thing we have today are the oversized canines of clouded leopards and the strange saber-like teeth of musk deer. But no creature in history has carried the saber-tooth the way that Smilodon did. Sometimes that's just the way the catnip crumbles. Today, we have over 40 living species in just 12 genera. Let's see who they are and how they adapted to survive. First, the big cats. The largest of the big cats is the true king of the jungle, the tiger, with some individuals reaching 300 kilograms or about 600 pounds. These are still monumental beasts. Their stripes hide them in the jungles while they ambush their prey. But their numbers are the opposite of that. In 2010, there were as few as 3,000 tigers in the whole world. That means you'd need 7 times the global population to fill out a hockey arena. Thankfully, the numbers have recovered thanks to amazing conservation work by groups like Panthera. So we asked our friend Dr. Wai Ming to tell us about saving this amazing cat.
My name is Wai Ming Wong. I am the director of Panthera's Small Cat Conservation Science. So I think overall we're doing quite well in tiger conservation. Numbers are up. I remember growing up as a kid, the numbers kind of always were around the 3,000 mark, and now they're kind of up to kind of the 4,200 mark, which is really fantastic. That's a fairly significant increase in global tiger populations. A lot of that increase has been on the Indian subcontinent, where there has been significant conservation initiatives aimed at tigers.
A 33% increase in population is massive, but the work continues.
There are still a lot of challenges within tiger conservation, right? Habitat fragmentation and degradation, prey depletion, as well as poaching of tigers and their prey, as well as agricultural expansion and infrastructure expansion, and maintaining political will over very large landscapes. In some places, trafficking remains a major threat, and in others, the issue is whether tiger habitat stays connected enough for populations to kind of remain viable. And as populations recover in some landscapes, conflict with people can also increase if it isn't proactively managed. But the encouraging part is that we know tiger recovery is possible.
These learnings will help us protect the other big cats. The most iconic of them is probably the lion. Being a social cat is actually pretty unique. This helps them catch large prey despite not being as huge as saber-tooths. Pride or die, baby! Leopards overlap with lions and specialize in prey that might be too small for lions to chase. When they do catch something, they have to eat it quickly or risk having its food stolen by lions, hyenas, and painted dogs. So they have learned to climb up a tree and have their meals while taking in the view. In the Americas, the jaguar occupies a similar niche to leopards. Some of their common prey are caimans and other aquatic animals, so they have to kill them quickly. To do that, they have evolved the strongest bite relative to size of all big cats, and have learned to crush its prey's skull for a quick kill. And in the mountains of Asia, snow leopards, with their rock-climbing skills and leaping prowess, have become specialists at eating other rock climbers, like sheep and ibex. There are also two kind of honorary big cats, the clouded leopard and the Sunda-clouded leopard. These two species, similar but separated by geography, can't roar like big cats, but can't purr either. Their skulls are more saber-toothy than any other living cat, and they climb so well that they can even walk down a tree head down. Any small or medium-sized arboreal animal in Southeast Asia is afraid of these guys. Big cats are probably the most well-known felines, aside from the house cat. But the small cat world is fascinating and a lot more diverse. Let's see how these tiny cats took over the world and my heart. One of the first lineages to split off is possibly the most mysterious of all the small cat clans, the bay cat lineage. If you've never heard of bay cats or their cousins, the Asian golden cat and the marbled cat, you're not alone. Very few people have heard of them, and even fewer have seen them. They're Southeast Asian cats. Marbled cats live in trees, and they're found from Nepal to Borneo. They're amazing climbers and have long tails for balance. They're kinda like squirrel cats. Bay cats and Asian golden cats are more generalist forest floor cats. They were once a single species, but they diverged when the land bridge between Borneo and continental Asia disappeared. Now, bay cats are endemic to Borneo, and golden cats have a wide but patchy distribution in the rest of Southeast Asia and China. Also in Asia, but with much smaller species, we have the Proailurus genus. The most common of them is the outrageously adorable leopard cat. They're generalists and are slightly tinier than a domestic cat. You can find them across Asia, from Afghanistan and India to North Korea and Malaysia. Then we get the weirdos. The fishing cat lives exclusively in wetlands and actively jumps in the water to catch prey. They're officially the wettest cat in the world. Then we have the flat-headed cat, from lowland forests near wetlands. These cats also fish, but instead of diving to hunt, they catch prey from the shore, like shorebirds. And finally, we have the rusty spotted cat, one of the smallest cats in the world and a specialist in the dry forest habitats of India and Sri Lanka. The closest relative to this genus is the Pallas cat from the rocky grasslands of Asia. This cat is the OG grumpy cat. It has some of the classic cold weather features, like a small tail and ears, because in the tundra, everything devolves to orb. And it also has round pupils, which gives them that iconic hyper-expressive look, like they're always slightly disappointed in you. Meanwhile, in Africa, the small cats were diversifying as well. The most statuesque of these new lineages was the caracal branch of the family. These cats have long legs and an elegant, borderline pretentious gait. I know I'm anthropomorphizing these cats, but they look kinda rich? I don't know. Anyways, I digress. Caracals are good jumpers and can even catch birds out of the air. Servals are even better and have a fox-like hunting technique where they pounce on rodents and other small prey. It's a useful technique in the tall grasslands where prey are hard to find and harder to follow. And finally, the golden cat is a more generalist cat. They had left the savanna and adapted to life in the jungle. Because of this, we know very little about it. But look at it! It's absolutely stunning. Meanwhile, in South America, with its wide variety of habitats, small cats were exploding. The genus Leopardus went wild and made hunters for every small prey. The largest of them is the ocelot, a mid-sized rainforest species that hunts mostly on the ground. If you're a small mammal running away from an ocelot, You might think that going up into a tree would be a way to save yourself. But unfortunately, in the canopy, the margay, the most arboreal of the South American cats, would be waiting to snatch you up. They're known to eat birds and monkeys. In areas without ocelots, the oncillas rule. They're basically pocket ocelots that can live in areas with less tree cover, like mountain forests, that can support smaller prey species. A subspecies of oncilla, the southern tigrina, has recently been proven to be a separate species and lives in the forests of southern Brazil and the Pantanal. In the colder rainforests of Chile, codcods appeared. They're small and have a thick coat that protects them from the cool temperatures of the southern part of the continent. In the less covered areas, multiple cats compete for the available prey. The Jeffries cat is the most flexible of them and thrives in open lands and the river forests in the grasslands. The Pampas cat is more of a grassland specialist and uses the cover of tall grass to sneak up on prey and pounce when they least expect it. And lastly, the Andean cat, using similar techniques as its grassland-dwelling cousin, takes up to the rocky hilltops of the Andes to catch vizcachas. This is one of the most specialized cat species on Earth and lives in environments few predators could survive in. Using a similar pouncing style, but better adapted to colder weather, is the lynx lineage. Their long legs and wide pads are adaptations for walking in rough terrain, like snowshoes. Their tiny tail prevents heat loss, and their large ears give them directional hearing. The Canada lynx is the most specialized of them. Its coat and clown-like feet help them traverse the snow and catch snowshoe hares. Across the pond, the Eurasian lynx makes up for its lack of extreme cold adaptations by being a bit bigger and adapting to boreal forests. The Iberian lynx is the Mediterranean version of the Eurasian lynx, and it is adapted to life in warmer weather, catching European rabbits with great skill anywhere they go. In North America, the bobcat is the most generalist of lynxes. It lives in pretty much any ecosystem in the continent except tundras. If you're watching this from North America, you're likely not too far from a bobcat. And finally, the wildcat lineage. These are super adaptable small cats that can live in huge swaths of the earth. In Asia and some parts of Africa, the jungle cat is a specialist in wetlands and tall grass. In southern Africa, the black-footed cat hunts under the cover of darkness and is the most ruthlessly efficient cat in the world, often catching over 10 different prey in a single night. Up in the Tibetan Plateau, the Chinese mountain cat specializes in cooler weather living and pika hunting. In the areas of the Sahara and other deserts, the sand cat survives by requiring very little water, being the color of sand, and having fur on its paws to protect them from the scorching temperatures. And finally, the European wildcat and the African wildcat are closely related and can be found across the forests, scrubs, and grasslands of the two continents as well as most of Asia. African cats were the ones who got domesticated to give rise to our beloved domestic cats. But unlike domestic cats, many small cats live in very specific ecosystems, and their numbers have been affected by human activity. Dr. Wong has some insight on the work being done to save them.
That's a great question. There's been huge progress over the past 10 to 20 years, but within wildcat conservation, it's still very much uneven. Many years ago, a colleague of mine, a guy called Jim Sanderson, anyone in small cat conservation knows of Jim Sanderson. He's a small cat champion. He did a very famous but very simple calculation, and he looked at all of the available funding that goes into wildcat conservation. And he calculated that less than 1% of all available funding went to the 33 small wildcats.
And the main reason for this is that many people simply don't know enough about small cats to care about them. But one thing I can assure you, to know them is to love them.
One of the points that I want to emphasize with small cats is that they're just really cool, right? They have really cool adaptations, as we discussed. Many habitat specialists. They live in these wetlands or dense rainforests, and so with that there's been some adaptations, right? We have the arboreal specialists, margays, clouded leopards, marble cats. They have all these kind of adaptations with rotating wrists that allow them to run down trees head first, hang upside down on branches. Some really cool stuff. The black-footed cat, for example, in South Africa, the smallest cat in Africa, but perhaps the most deadliest. It has a 70% kill rate. Very, very successful. I want to emphasize and illustrate that many of these small cats are just as charismatic as the big ones, but also very ecologically important. Kind of bringing it back to the point where it's really important to kind of look at this kind of that middle approach, those small cats, the medium-sized carnivores, as global indicators of change, particularly in a rapidly changing world with degrading environments and that sort of stuff. The small cats will certainly kind of provide us with a really good indicator of how things are doing in the future. So a super important group of species to be studying.
I couldn't agree more. Let's all continue learning about these amazing cats and get more involved in their conservation. And if you can, support organizations like Panthera, who are trying tirelessly to protect all living cats. So there it is, all the cats that you didn't know and a lot more. What's your favorite cat that you didn't know about? If you liked learning about cats, check out our episode about the evolution of the domestic cat, where we go in depth into the adaptations that made the internet's favorite animal. So what should we talk about? Please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. Thanks for watching, please go pet your kitty, and I'll see you next time. Meow. I almost just died.